But in looking back, I also did find out that the last time you were on the podcast was almost 2 years ago to the day of like when we're sitting down right now to record this, which is wild.
Yeah.
I mean, does it seem like it's been that long?
It kind of does in a way. Yeah. We only got together one time, and that was with Salty View. And I was trying to remember also when the last time it was, and I was like, it's been a while. But I didn't know it was 2 years.
Yeah, and that was the wild thing was like I looked at it and I looked at the number it was and I was like, oh, we're really close to being 2 years on the nose here. So I looked up the date and I think it was March 12th, and this one's going to come out the 17th. So it's like off by like barely a week, you know.
Crazy.
But then you and I were talking a little bit before this podcast episode that like maybe the reason it seems like it's been so long was because when we were recording that, like COVID was a topic of conversation, but it wasn't something that we thought was just going to turn the world on its side.
Right.
And
yeah. So like we did that podcast and we were really just kind of gearing up for what those spring and summer shows were going to be. And so you said March 12th.
Yep.
There was, I can't remember if it was April or if it was just a couple weeks after that, but we ended up booking a show. It was for like a Christmas party, and I can't remember if it was like Cargill or what, but they had booked us, and it was in March or April, and we went and we did the first show, and we were supposed to do two, and we did the first show, and the next one was going to be that following weekend because they had to split it up because they have so many employees. They just did like a 2-night thing, and we had gotten a phone call just a couple of days prior, and it was like that was COVID. Like it hit and they had to cancel the gig. Like we didn't have to do it. Like everything was shutting down. And so it's crazy everything that like transpired after we did that podcast.
That's so wild. Like I get it. Like everyone had their gigs pretty much canceled from one point going forward, but you had like a guaranteed like 2-night thing with like one company. It's like a private show that was like split in half. So you have this weird like, oh, they drew the line like in between two gigs.
It was so crazy. It would, like I said, the 2 weekends, and then within a couple of days after doing our first performance for them, they were like, we can't do it.
Oh, wow.
They're shutting us down. And I'm like, holy cow. And I think that's when we really figured out, like, not to make this all about COVID, but things were going to change. And looking back on it now, the amount of things that did change, especially for musicians and performers, it's crazy to think that we've lived through that. Yeah. And like now we're kind of, getting back out there and gearing up and hoping that it stays that way.
I feel like the music scene in the North Central Iowa area where you and I spend most of our time is stronger than ever, honestly.
Oh,
like
for sure.